Disclaimer: the information and education material contained herein is meant to promote the general understanding and dialogue of GAN's processing. Such information is not meant or intended to serve as a substitute for a healthcare professional's clinical training, experience, or judgment. For patients and individuals, such information is not to be a substitute for professional medical, therapeutic, or healthcare advice or counseling. For medical issues or concerns, including decisions about medications and other treatments, readers, viewers, listeners should always consult their physician or, in serious cases, seek immediate assistance from emergency personnel. Prescription information, procedures, and use of medical devices information should be undertaken only by properly trained and certified medical personnel. We specifically disclaim any warranties, express or implied, including implied warranties of merchantability or fitness for a particular purpose. Such information is provided, as is, and is believed to be accurate at the time of its publishing, but it is the viewer's job to evaluate the accuracy of any information found in this presentation. Every case presented is of their own experience, applied by themselves for themselves, and it applies to their case only. Every person experiencing health problems should seek professional medical advice and consult their course of treatment with a doctor. The processes of plasma balancing described herein are a natural process which supports the body but does not replace medical advice or therapies one is already subject to.
Well, that's amazing. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. And this is part of the Keshe American Knowledge Team meeting of 2026. So welcome and Happy New Year to everyone. It's kind of interesting that the word mind-blowing has been like severely overused. But as we've often stated, it's a very important meeting that we have today because we're represented by so many people from various continents around the world. And what happens as a result is that we are following in the jet stream of the mind-blowing experience of last Thursday, the Knowledge Seekers Workshop. I think has genuinely opened up avenues of thought that we probably never really gave it much thought. But now we are confronted with what we absolutely have to do this. We just have to mature to that aspect of it. So I want to thank all the knowledge seekers who have supported the Keshe Foundation on this Thursday session, the really strong army coming from the Brazilian community on Friday nights, and many of you here in North America with the help of all the people around the world, making this a very important time in our lives. So since we have nothing else to do, we might as well carry on with this thing. Wouldn't that be a good idea?
Maybe we don't have nothing else to do. Maybe we can't find anything better to do.
Well said, Mark. Well said. So, yes, we are being tongue-in-cheek because we're trying to, well, you figure out what you're trying to do. We all need to figure that out. This is the Keshe Foundation Spaceship Institute Teachings on Plasma Science. We are entering a new phase, the basic Pico tech. And today we're going to talk about the Pico core. My name is Alexander. I am from Canada. It is January the 11th, 2026. This is part of the Keshe Foundation North America Plasma Education Series. So we left off with the advanced GANs tech last time, and we're discussing solid GANs. We talked about many things before that, like sunflowers, the gold rush, sun stars, sun shield, squeezy. And now we're going into the basic Pico tech. And as you can see, we've left a trail of many series of workshops that we have been trying to distill the information down into bite-sized pieces. And so please remember that this is something that we have to do. We have to continue. We just can't wait for everyone else to catch up, but we certainly can leave the breadcrumbs for people to follow and learn at their own pace. But in the meantime, we have to make sure that we review. And in that aspect of it, we take the existing knowledge and apply it to the new knowledge. And so today it's the Pico core. And if we remember, when we first started to talk about plasma science, we had to understand the difference between increased, enhanced, and levels of magnitude. And so scientifically speaking, levels of magnitude are 10 times. So if we look at how we go from the singularity of the 1, 10 times that, times 10 times 10 is 10 to the third, gives us the kilo. But if we go the other way, 10 to the minus third gives us the milli. And so that kind of is the containment of the old science, and was very, very reluctant to go beyond that. But, you know, we did discuss the micro and, of course, the offsetting mega. And once we entered the nano field, we were able to look at the corresponding gigafield. But here we are looking at the pico field. Let's remember the balance, the counterbalance is the tera. And now we are well outside of the box. So what box is that? Well, that box is the one beyond Beijing, where on May the 10th, 2025, the gold rush began. And now here we are in 2026, and the silver rush has begun. And so what's really interesting is that this is not as per our doing, because what we're talking about is the plasma science and how we're trying to deliver this knowledge. What we're looking at is the rush that is coming as a result of man-made activity. So this is all part of the core, if you will, what we call the gravitational core, which is part of the matter state. And the frozen Gans ball shows you how it looks in solid state. There's a gravitational core, and there are magnetical hair-like lines that are being emitted from there. And so we, by freezing this Gans ball inside inside a water container, and then we get a snapshot in time. And it is kind of impressive because you wouldn't be able to manufacture a mold to create this. You can create the cube, the ice cube, if you will. You can create the Gans ball, if you will. But how do you corral the pathways that all of these magnetical hair-like lines have created in the ice and got frozen in time, just like we saw, shall we say, with the sudden freezing of the mastodons? And we know it's a sudden freezing because they still had the food that they were chewing in their mouths. And they still had their hairy bodies. So they were basically frozen in time, and we try and estimate what that time is. And it was a long, long time ago. And so there was a sudden transition. What exactly caused that? There's a lot of conjecture. But the thing is that we have images of a gravitational core and magnetical lines, and the whole cube, the whole ice cube shows us a structure. And so we are discussing the Pico core. because we are in the beyond of the nano monatomic state. We are in the pico atomic state. And there's clearly a difference. And so now is a visible difference. It's been very difficult to attain this visibility. And so, a lot of people from Missouri are having trouble because what you see is what you believe. And if you can't see it, you can't believe it. Well, believe this, we are in the pico atomic era. And this has been well described for many, many years by the books of Meritopically Cash, such as in book number 1, The Universal Order of Creation of Matter. So this helps us to understand how that was created. And then, of course, the structure of light tells us how we go from one field to another field. And that was very helpful. And then book number 3, The Origin of the Universe. And here we got really stuck because how can the origin of the universe be number 3 and the creation of matter be number 1? Shouldn't that be the opposite? And so it implies or imparts a lot of confusion, and especially in how we want to describe that. So we have to be a little bit more skillful. And the thing is that we have to understand that there's more here than just meets the eye. So we really not only have to step out of the box, but we have to leave the state of Missouri and look at what the members of the Universal Council, along with Rick Crammond, have been bringing together for 412 weeks. We call it the One Planet, One Nation, One Race for Justice and World Peace. And maybe that's going to turn into a peace rush, and that's what we need to achieve. Because we've always fallen back, if you will, on something that we're comfy with. But is it comfy? We call this angular density, the falling through weakness. Yeah, I'm going to go back. I don't want to stick my head out, like a turtle. And, besides the danger, but the possibility of getting criticized. So we fall back into our increased density, increased pressure, increased gravity, and increased dependence on Earth space feeding, which made us into fallen angels. And this was representative in the internal pressure of the gas fields. But since the angular momentum is conserved, where is that internal pressure coming from? What is that source? What is at the core? So when we understand our position on this planet and we question it, someone has provided the answers. They've given us commandments. This is how you play the game. These are the rules. But they didn't give us all the commandments, at least within our understanding here in the Western world. There were some missing commandments, and one of them is thou shalt not lie. And that's very interesting because the game of poker is very, very popular. And of course, lying is a skill that gets rewarded in the game of poker. But the truth of the matter is you can't lie to yourself. But the whole purpose of the poker game is to derive this energy binding, which is self-serving, and that gives you that dimension point that emphasizes me, myself, and I. And since we've all received that energy, it's a wonder that we have to continue to receive that energy at the expense of others. So why are we doing that? And why do we revel in this conflict? Because we don't understand the plasma rule, where the higher strength feeds the weaker strength. It's still a transaction zone, but bringing two fields together or bringing two armies together doesn't have to result in conflict. It can be a binding zone. But a binding zone could be a conflict point. And since the manifestation is of a lower density. Excuse me. In the manifestation is a lower energy state and an increased density. That is the inertia product. And so the manifestation of this density is an inertia density manifestation. And that manifestation can be in a matter state or in a plasma state. And there are many confusing things to understand in that terminology because we find that the plasma state transcends both the matter state and the plasma state. And in fact, every state is a plasma state. We're just having to identify the kind of manifestation that results. And so we started a long time ago understanding nanocharges and how the smaller particle gives a charge, and that allows a discharge. And then that has to continue. And in its simple state, we can see how we align more nanocharges together. And so instead of having one charge and one discharge, we have, in this picture, 6. Well, what if we do layers and we stack that? And we can stack them in a certain way and like create a nanotube. And that was the goal of science in its extreme. And even before I joined the Keshe Foundation a decade ago, understanding nanotubes was the holy grail. But once we understood the nanocoding process and how we created this monatomic alignment, we created a carbon nanocrystal. And we created many layers. And then we found, well, these layers can stack and be aligned as a nanotube, but the diamond structure actually closes the tubes. So now you have different pathways. And so you can think of a kind of a nesting where you have nanomonatomic layers, right? But because they are monatomic, spherical, they bond together, but there are gaps. And so there are also nanogaps. And then as the layering continues, we get into the basic understanding of the star formation. So if you place your index finger and your second finger tip to tip from your left hand and your right hand and simply turn 190 degrees, the tips of your fingers represent the points of a tetrahedron. And that is a star formation. And so when we go back to this layer of the star stacking, we see that there are connectors, and these are the intermediary connectors, but they're not physical. They're in the gaps. And so, of course, because you have so many neighbors, it could be covalent, trivalent, tetravalent, and these are bonds. And so these bonds show you how, if you have one basic layer, depending on how you do the star formation, the lower layer could be the larger one and the upper layer being the peak, or they can be upside down, where the upper layer is the base and the lower layer is the peak. So you have this opposite pole where you create these nanostars. And because they're all stacked together and aligned together, you get this synergy. And so we often said that 1 + 1 + 1 is more than 3, because you end up with 3 dimensions in the star formation, and the energy builds up. And that's what is you get this multiple monatomic energy flows. And we've said all along that they are superconductors at room temperature. But what's interesting is that as these nanostars form, they continue to link up in a chain. And if you have more than three, that's a polymer. But in the physicality of the creation of the life, the three fold over and become protein. So that's the difference between a man-made gravitational structure and a creator-made gravitational structure. And so it folds over into a star formation. And so we see at the base that is gravitational, but at the peak, it's magnetical. And so that's easy to determine, but there is a bond. There is a field that is created. And then there's an internal structure that is also created and is derived from the original star formation. So we talked about production of star fields using rotating balls, which were physical and they were driven by motors. And we showed the same thing in Beijing. We had rotating balls, but it was different. We didn't have one rotating ball at each point, but we had two. And it was raining gold. And so we had these dynamic reactors because each rotating field had a plasma field, and all the fields coming together created this positive charge, this thing in the core, highly gravitational. So if we look at the energy without the machinery, we can see that there's a dynamic plasma that is flowing from within the core and throughout and without. And what's interesting is that this is what happens within our cells. But in our core, we have a dynamic core plasma. And in our cellular structure, we have mitochondria. These are the energy furnaces, the blast furnaces that give us the energy in a currency of life, which we call adenosine triphosphate, that's ATP. But the thing is, the DNA of the mitochondria does not match the DNA of the cellular structure. So when we talk about the dynamic plasma, we can see that within that structure, within our Earth state, in other words, within our physicality, we can see all the basic dimensions of this reality. We'll call this the matter state, which consists of the physicality, the GAN state, the plasma state, and the dynamic plasma state. All within our realm. We didn't have to even go into, shall we say, space. But this dynamic core plasma can be in the plasma state or in the matter state. But there's a transition between the plasma state and the matter state. How do we bridge that gap? What's in the gap? What's at the core? So why is it different in our cellular structure that we have RNA and DNA? Why is that different? Why can we not say, well, the DNA is the full complement of the star formation? Well, as we look at these wheels that are turning, they really emphasize that sarcastic statement that we are the four-wheelers of creation because of our tendency to only believe what we see. So we only see the natural creation. We don't see the natural decay. But we have to understand that the natural decay is part of creation. It's just going in the opposite direction. Where's the counterbalance? The counterbalance is in the natural decay. And that too has a field to balance of natural creation. So in either way, you have to be looking at a kind of outensity that comes from the intensity. But if you have the intensity of the creation and the intensity of the decay, there has to be some kind of connection and this inertia bonding factor, something at the core. And is it only the core that is between the matter state and the plasma state? Or is it the core that is between the natural creation and the natural decay? Or is it both? That is to say, the range of natural creation and natural decay in the matter state and the natural decay and natural creation in the plasma state. So when we look at the beginning, as it's outlined in book number 3, the neutron came before the atom and the PM tick, right? Because from the neutron, it split up. Why? Because it went beyond its containment. And so from the one, we were able to create two. And now we are confronted with understanding that more fully. But there had to be some kind of impetus from the core. And there's a parallel description, as we see in the cellular structure, where in the nucleus of the cell, we see that energy being emitted. And in terms of physics, that emission is light. But did we say that it's visible light or non-visible light? Or we just say, well, it came from darkness. So we created the PM tick, the electron, and the proton. And interestingly enough, the atom is a combination of the electron proton, and whereas the PM tick is all by its lonesome. But we understand that without a magnetical gravitational relationship, it doesn't exist. So it can't be energy that is captured. It can't be energy that is in motion. It is simply energy either in containment or energy in potential. And so that energy is always looking for a field within which to be captured. But there's not just one energy, and there's not just one layer. There are multiple layers. And then once they become captured, there are multiple densities. And so in a two-dimensional drawing, we have to understand that there are multiple spheres and that they're offsetting energies. So when we look at the universal order of creation matter, the coming together of the matter, antimatter, and the dark matter, that is at the core of the issue. And there's a counterweight balance in all the densities that go around. But these densities in terms of physicality, have different densities and therefore exhibit different colors. It would stand to reason that in the non-visible realities, we likewise have multiple densities. So when we look at the sun stars, some stars are in our night sky and we see them. Some are brighter than others. So we understand that these tetrahedral stars have points, but the truth is that they're spherical stars. And so our sun star is our sun. And it is brighter than the other sun star manifestations. So these suns in the sky are not as bright as our sun. And so the same is true with the fallen angels, because they are, in terms of light, emitting as a fallen star. So to elevate, we have to elevate as an arrived angel, as an arrived sun star. So the principles are the same, and the principal matter are the PM ticks. And since they're energy in motion, they're magnetical, and they converge into a plasmagen, bringing together the antimatter, dark matter, and the mattergen. But they cannot manifest into physicality until they have a field interaction with an environment. And so here we are in Earth space, and then Earth space is a maggrav. And so the interaction of our mattergen convergence and the Earth space convergence is another inertia field, and that is our existence. So we see these maggrav pathways where we have the gravitational intensity, which is attraction. And so once we have that, that's part of our feedback, right? That's the result of our having gathered this energy. And the magnetical outintensity is the repulsion. That's part of the feeding. So we say the electron is the giver and the neutron is the taker. So now we can see the difference between what we talk about in matter, plasma, dimensions. Except the problem with it is terminology. The matter and plasma are the same, but they're also different. So in the matter state, the plasma, which is physical, we can touch it and see it. But in the plasmatic state, we can't touch it or see it. So everything that we reference is in the physical. But the support structure for the physical is in the plasmatic dimension. So the support structure for the matter plasma is included in the matter plasma dimension. And so we are feedback dominant with the physical plasma, ignoring the fact that there is a non-visible plasma as part of the matter plasma domain. So this is important because of the counterweight measures. And so if we understand how focused and over-focused we are on the physical state, and we measure that by weight, but in the atomic state, we measure it by mass. Either way, it represents a gravitational measure. But in the nuclear state, we measure it by Teslas. And in the plasma state, we measure it by time. And that part is the counterweight measure that is magnetical. So if we understand this matter-plasma dimension, We see that the atomic state, the nanostate, and the GAN state is all part of the physical plasma matter. But there is a substructure of the plasma state that supports this physical matter and completes the picture. And so we can transcend the different states. So within each state, there has to be a corresponding counterweight. But if we go through this Maggrav energy transference, we can go from state to state and still have a counterweight that is in balance. So that is to say, when we look at the carbon inertia highways and how we understand as carbon beings who we are and what we are, we understand that our physicality is part of the transmission. And the transition state is part of the carbon-14. And the communication with the rest of the universe is the carbon-16. So if this is our reference, where's the rest of the universe? Well, there it is. It's supporting in the background. And if that is in the background, and it too has its 3 dimensions, what is supporting that? Well, that too is in the background. So we see that in the foreground or the background, we have multiple turning points of reference. And overall, the foreground and the background themselves have multiple turning points. So we start to see that these turning points are available to us in all 3 dimensions, including the support dimension. And that support dimension is the plasma state coming together in the dilution of emotions. So from a plasmatic point of view, it's the same as man-space's point of view. And we discuss it as the emotion of man, the emotion of physicality, the emotion of presence, the emotion of position, the emotion of vision, the emotion of knowledge. And so we get from there to the soul space point of view, the emotion of love, which is simply irresistible. And so that's sitting at the core. And here we are, we're seeking vitality enhancement, not just because we are deficient and needing supplementation because of our fallen status in terms of increased density, increased gravity, increased dependence on Earth's space energy, but we are also loose leakers. Through our own activities, we suffer from actions of, self-sabotage. And it drains us emotionally. And so therefore it limits the enhancement of our physicality. And since we are on this earth space, the manifestation of our physicality is very important. And it becomes hindered. And life is tough enough without being a loose leaker. So when we look at sunflowers, we start to realize that there are other fields to take into account. Because when we look at the different components of the sunflower, we see the singularity of each field, which is a magnetical gravitational relationship. Then that field turns into another field of a singularity of a magnetical gravitational field. And then we go to the outer side, the magnetical gravitational relationship of the petals. Let's remember that there's another field, a plasmatic field, that also has magnetical gravitational relationship. And so these are all overlapping fields. And that's just a sunflower, but there are many sunstar varieties. And we are included in that narrative. So we found that when we created the cups of life, that was the basic nanocoding process of the monatomic science. But there was something in that core space and helped us create the GANs, created the GANs of the emotion and the GANs of physicality. But we were able to do different kinds of radiance manifestation. Carbon dioxide, calcium, zinc, copper, water, and amino acid. And of course, we started the gold rush. And now we're faced with the silver rush. But there are going to be many rushes washing over us. Because now we understand the one-track cup of the universe is to give us life, to give us our energy of existence and capability, and bringing together the GANs of the copper, which is physical, and the GANs of the zinc, which is emotional, and the GANs of the carbogen, which is the connection to the universe, and the bonding factor to the emotional and physicality of our existence, which then is translated into physicality. And we, in that process, manifest our physical dimension, but we don't lose the connection to the cup of the universe, the energy of the emotion, the energy of the physicality, and the energy of the emotion of the connection to the universe. And if only we could recognize that the somatoscope was able to see even tinier magnification, where we didn't just look at the red blood cells, but we looked at the manifestation of the somatids. And we did this in a movie, a motion picture. And a motion picture has more information than a still picture that is frozen in time. So like the ice cube, we see the results of the motion, but we don't see that point where it is created. So are these somatids squeezed from the red blood cells? And we see that there are gaps in the red blood cells. And so they themselves can be squeezy in a plasma state. So this knowledge is irrefutable. It was made public in 1987. So, it's not something that we talk about on a regular basis. But somehow we have a physical destination here in our bodies. And it came from a dynamic transfer state. And we reinforce that every time we go to sleep. And we don't really like to talk about that too much, do we? But then when we look at the cup relationships, we see that there's a magnetical gravitational relationship, and each cup has a soul radiance. So that's true for the cup of emotion, the cup of physicality, and the cup of the soul. And so therefore it has to be true of the cup of the earth, and it has to be true of the cup of the soul as it comes together, and it has its own soul radiance, and that interacts with the cup of the earth and creates the cup of inertia. And we know that is true because we have been able to create ganses of every single element on this planet, plus many more. And so, is it transacted in singularity or duality? Well, the manifestation is in singularity, but the substructure is in duality. So when we look at the solid ganses, we know from the cup of life that we were able to create ganses in water. That was the cup of life product. But then we look at the overlapping fields of the solid gans. These are not atomic bonds. These are covalent bonds, different from atomic bonds. They are products of emotion. So the nuclear feeding inertia is the same thing. It's just that you can take the fragments of the complexity and still maintain the gravitational stability. And so that energy is portable through various dimensions and various dimension points. And they're all different, really, because the energy is constantly in motion. So you can never get the complete set the way you did before. You can get a nearness and proximity, but, you know, when you look at the Earth space range details of the periodic table of physical matter, and you take gold, for instance, there are different grades, different purities. And so the gold is not the same everywhere. Same is true of oil. Oil is not the same everywhere. So where does the difference come from? And so it comes together from the core details of the feeding inertia of the Gans matter. There's a singularity of each field and the duality of the mag-rav of the inertia fields. And so we follow that same pattern. And our vitality is not derived from being fallen angels, but being arrived angels. Because our destination was Earth space. And so our manifestation is all part of the inertia density manifestation. And so that is all related to the hydrogen dependency. And we see even the hydrogen is operating the same way. Depending on its polar alignment, like poles are orthohydrogen, opposite poles are parahydrogen. And they have different characteristics. So therefore, when we take the Gans of the Gans, that also represents different characteristics. So if we take two cups of emotion and create a Gans of a Gans and a cup of emotion, and two cups of physicality and create a Gans of a Gans and a cup of physicality, now we have an interaction of the cup of emotion transaction zone and the cup of physicality transaction zone. And so we have to take that into account. And so you have your concept of the duality where you have 2 points working in tandem as a partnership. And this becomes the fundamental core point of the twinity. So you have your field and it's connected to another field. So that connection becomes a transaction zone, whether it's in physicality or whether it's in plasma state. And so that susceptibility and duality can be modulated, modified, controlled. And so even in its basic form, a star formation, each star formation point is the product of a star formation. So the formation of the star formation coming from the individual points of the star formations create this transaction zone. And it manifests in a gravitational core that is very, very strong. And we were able to create gold. But now we may have to hide our forks, knives, and spoons because we're running into shortages. So someone needs to step up to the plate and understand these polyatomic inertia gradients and how they align in terms that are atomic. You have this bonding between these gravitational transaction zones and these magnetical transaction zones. And so when they align, like they do in the solid GANs, they manifest in polyatomic inertia fields, and they stay together with covalent bonds, which means they're not visible. So we understand now that the Pico core polyatomic covalent bonds create that inertia field, and they are everywhere in each and every one of these individual transactions. But in the nanocoding process, we saw them in their physicality. But when we look at that susceptibility and duality, we realize that at the gravitational core is a plasma core. And that plasma core manifests in physicality and becomes a Pico core. So we find that the creation of the free plasma, how that energy is squeezed out in the plasma state, and we see the Pico core gravitational core, how it creates life, the carbon, oxygen, hydrogen, nitrogen structure within a structure, and they link up. More than three is a polymer. But when they fold over, they create protein. And so there is a external process which initiates the folding. And so this is the root of the cosmic ray bonding. And to understand that each layer has a magnetical gravitational relationship, and then overall, the outer and the inner have a magnetical gravitational relationship as well. So with the monatomic structure of the nanocoding, creating the diamond structure, in the core is the Pico structure. And it is very different in its structure. And so it allows not only this vertical alignment where we have the infinity loop, the relationship between the soul and the soul of physicality, and the soul of physicality with its physicality, but we have an inertia field emission that comes from the vertical alignment and allows us to cross that threshold. It's as if you squeezed it in a plasma state and it came out. And so we find that the same method pertains to the galaxies. We squeeze out these PM ticks. And so all of the PM ticks, all of them, are magnetical, and they come from a gravitational core. And all we're talking about today is the Pico core. But we have to understand that there's a cosmic ray equilibrium. So as the emission comes as a cosmic ray and manifests eventually into an inertia density manifestation of the Pico core, there's always a maintenance of equilibrium. So there's a magnetical consistency, and it's variable. And there's a gravitational consistency, because gravity seeks density. And we found that the solid GANs accelerates the angular momentum, while the Pico core accelerates it even faster. And so we find that transaction zone between the cup of motion and the cup of physicality is at the core of our existence and enhances our gravitational stability. So we are a gravitational entity traveling in a magnetical field. And so the only way that we can travel is by giving and taking. And we don't give and take in the physicality, we do it in the plasma reality. And even such, there are different field strengths. And so they adopt a posture of magnetical gravitational relationships. And when they come together in a transaction zone that emphasizes this magnetical gravitational relationship, we have this dimension point. And from there, we can go through what is discrimination. We have to select our own personal star of physicality, that solar physicality of our sun. So that's done through a pre-selection process. We have the solar physicality of the stars of the universe, and the sun is shielding us on many levels. So what we have been able to pass through, we are the product of that discrimination, and we are attracted to the oxygen. That gives us a gravitational confirmation that we have crossed that threshold, that we are that emission of light. We have been attracted to the oxygen, but oxygen is a non-visible gas, and it too is able to emit light and show us its nature and uniqueness, and it has a fingerprint. So we can see the range from plasmatic decay to GANs, and the GANs decay from gas to liquid to solid. Well, how solid does it get? It goes to the monatomic state of the GANs, the monatomic state of the nano, down to the monatomic state of the pico. So we find that the supplementation is necessary here because we're running short of energy due to our habit of consumption. And our consumption is based on an acquired knowledge, a conditional teaching by ancient teachers, forgetting that there's an unconditional teaching by the Creator. So this gives us a new awareness, a historical threshold between the cosmic feeding and the louche harvesting. That's kind of the difference. We're in an uncharted territory. And so we are at the turning point where we are many stars beyond the nanomonatomic state, covering that range from decay to radiation. So the AI is the ancestral intelligence that is contributed to us. So we are the technology, we are that inertia product. We are the image of a dimensional convergence point. And so that energy is portable. And what we mean by that is that it can go through different transition states. Elevation is the physical matter state to energy state, and inertia is the energy state to physical matter state. So when we talk about elevation, that involves expansion. But when we have the susceptibility and singularity, when we go right down to the Pico core, we find that the gravitational completion must be supplemented by an external input of a Gans field of humanity. So now we have a susceptibility and duality because both interactions are variable. And then, of course, we have that third eye squeezy coming in, that 3i. And so for 624 weeks, the Knowledge Seekers workshops have been trying to bring together this understanding of the greater oneness and how we can suddenly transcend the limitations of nuclear science. And we're all getting an opportunity to participate in this transmission using the cosmic rays. So please consider these processes from January to March of 2026 and be part of an extension of the space plasma research teams as we're converting diamonds to gold or silver. And we are still in the May the 10th of 2025, coming to realize the Pico core of the truth. We're all one nation network seeking a scientific rescue, opening the blinds, one nation network at a time. And that time is now. That time is to bring peace on earth and join humanity with the universal community. We want to bring more men as equal to all the beings in the universe by teaching the plasma science and technology equally to everyone, that no one is left out and no one is abused due to the lack of knowledge. And so please help us achieve this goal. This is the Keshe Foundation Spaceship Institute. We continue to teach plasma science, welcoming all the beautiful knowledge seekers of the carbon nations, learning about the new selection process of the new organic plasma science. That's just our point of view. That's our world point of view. But if you want to go beyond that core, that Pico core, we need to sign this World Peace Treaty. Choose it, sign it. Sign it unconditionally and mean it sincerely, because the point of the true Pico tech is the polyatomic core manifestation. It takes these overlapping fields of Earth space and they create the peace stone. So is the inertia of the present governed by the dimensions of history, or is it time to learn the history of self in a universal context? The Pico state promotes the GANS as a peaceful superconductor. The Pico core is the root accelerator through fields ranging the matter, the plasma, and the universal states. Plasma science is enhanced daily via the peace stone in a practical exchange for peace on earth. So let's continue to do this, and welcome to the new golden outer space age. And I hope you enjoyed this class. Thank you so much.
Very much so. Thank you, Alex, for increasing our comprehension. Again, let's see if anyone has any questions they'd like to ask. But I was thinking that, remember in Linz, we had the material enhancement unit and we had the body enhancement unit. There were two separate units. So apparently, I just came to realize that what he's shown in Beijing was that in a way, the material enhancement unit.
Yes, that would be correct.
I think so. Yeah. And again, it was just amazing when I first heard in the Keshe Foundation that you could feed yourself without eating. And this was years ago, of course. I said there is no way possible that one person could feed themselves without eating. Little did I know about more in the energy dimension, that even when we take the food in, that we're releasing 99.99999, we're only extracting the energy. Now Mr. Keshe is saying he can put that energy in rain and people can actually absorb it. It was a beautiful part there of the workshop where he said we can create that energy and all you have to go do is go out in the rain to be able to absorb it. So again, beyond the imagination of the man. Whether he'll do it or not, we'll have to see, but it may be being tested right as we speak. Did you pick up on that, anyone? or perhaps they can rain oil as well. And he's being sort of pushed in that direction. So that's what we saw in Beijing, was what we call the material enhancement unit. And what we see on the back picture of the workshop is the body enhancement spaceship unit, that little portable one that's now being offered. I believe it's being offered.
Well, how many times have you, heard someone say something to you and you kind of cringe when you hear it and you say, like, please tell me what I want to hear? And as well, I'm to decide what you want to hear. How I'm grappling with determining what I want to say, And so if what I want to say is what you want to hear, how is that my shall we say, condition? And so, yeah, we have to be respectful, You can't go and insult people without experiencing some kind of blowback on that. So you have to.
We've all experienced it, I believe, in
Yeah,
one shape or form or another.
yeah, you have to, you have to be discreet. But the thing is that the taking of the energy or the taking of that knowledge or understanding is up to the receiver. And so we find that many receivers have a selective hearing. So they only hear what they want to hear and they ignore everything else that you're saying. And so that's okay. That's okay as long as, there's no emotional hangover. What I refer to abeyance, that is holding energy in a pattern because someone has said, okay, I'll be there at 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, and you show up at 2 in the afternoon and they don't show up, and you say, well, I had to hold this energy based on what you said, but you didn't mean it sincerely. You were just saying what you thought I wanted to hear. That's not what I wanted to hear. I wanted to hear that you'll be there at 2 o'clock and I'll show up. Imagine if none of us showed up for this meeting. Uh, you have to be consistent. That's what makes this meeting so powerful, Mark. And then you're the one who's there. And
Here, nothing, Alex. We're just facilitating.
no, I know, but you have a responsibility and you've accepted that responsibility and you're sincere. And I'm trying to do exactly the same. And so we see by the list of classes that I've been doing, which is now over 200 classes, and even I'm amazed at how many have accumulated. And I can't keep up with the editing of these classes, which is what I need to do. But I have to remember that I have to keep going. And Mr. Kesh is relentless in his advancement of the technology. And we need to be grateful for that because that's what the whole purpose of this is the freedom and emancipation of humanity. That is what's at the core. And since we now understand how dense and how powerful that core is, now we have to harness that energy. So NASA scientists have always known that the energy of the universe can be contained in a thimble. And you say, well, if it can be that tiny, why do we need these big reactors and these big spaceships? And why do we, have these big explosions? And do we have to be so careless? Do we have to explode? So we are on the verge of a real dynamic explosion of information. And it's not going to come with rockets and dynamite. It's going to come with the containment of the Pico core in a environment that is going to be conducive to its emission.
And you may have it a bit easier in the future. As he said, we will transfer knowledge through the energy dimension, even to the point where he said, you want to be a nuclear physicist, you can become 100 times better nuclear physicist than me. Or speaking a language, imagine. How did you learn 5 languages in 5 days and you're speaking so fluently? It was taught through the energy dimension. So this is what will be so amazing, I think, to people, that by working, it's almost a direct connection where you don't need the professors, or you don't need to go to classes for a year, or visit the country even. You'll be speaking a language more perfect than the native speakers, as I understand it. And this is the transfer through the energy dimension, which is about to be opened up and is being opened up.
Well, this is a topic that I discussed again this week, often discussed it, but you know, we have a habit of trading our uh, valuable lives for money, and it's not a fair deal. And yet some people think that that's equal, so they put a value on their money, you know. And I know one chap, he sold his kidney for 75,000. But you know, that's the point is that we are bragging about our vehicles. You know, we have a fancy car. Oh, look at my fancy car and look at the shiny paint and everything. And you know, I said, well, what am I looking at? Well, you're looking at my fancy car. I said, yeah, but you bought that. You bought that with money. So, you know, why are you trying to impress me with your fancy car? Because I can too buy that fancy car with money. Remember the days when you were younger and guys would tinker? They would go in and have their dune buggies or racing cars or go-karts. And now
I always liked the wrinkle wall tires. I don't know if you were familiar with those back in the days. Some of the high
yeah,
school.
but the thing is that the people who were putting that together, you know, were bragging. That's what the races were about. That's what the drag races were about. That's what
Yeah.
you know, the Formula One and NASCAR racing was all about, is bragging rights. You know, and
Yes.
everybody
Who had more
brought their
snob appeal?
yeah, but the thing is they had something to brag about. Okay, because what they put together wasn't just because of the money. They put it together because of a knowledge. And so we've come to the point now where, because we look at the advanced technology like in computer chips, we can't put it together the way we did in the past. You know, we can't build a radio the way we did in the past. You know, when you went to the shop and you bought all the parts, you put it together and say, here, I put this together. Now I have some bragging rights, and that would be right. But to say, oh, you know, I went to the store and I bought a computer and look at how fancy this computer is. Yeah, but you bought that with money. So, you know, what is it that you're bragging about? And why do you need to brag about it? And you know, so you have the bodybuilders and the beauty queens going to the fitness centers and spas to enhance their natural ability.
Well, you brought up that background with all the different emotions, but I noticed you didn't bring up the emotion of completeness. That's what I'm seeking, where you don't need the money, you don't need the name, you don't need the face, you don't even need the place. You're complete. And
See, that is beautiful, Mark.
yeah, I think this is what's going to happen, that it's not going to be so much more important in the matter state to show off or confirm your existence that way or the rest of it. but this emotion of completeness, I think, is beautiful. And that's what you'll probably experience playing the game or in one of these units, I believe.
Well, definitely. And then, just the fact that you brought up the game again, and this is important, there is a limit on, shall we say, the reward structure of the game. And so those who are racing, to be the best of the best in a highly competitive nature, the question, what happens when you fulfill your, shall we say, ceiling? And let's say when we look at after March 21st, you will keep score during the calendar month. And let's say in the first week you complete your assignment. What will you do for the other 3 weeks? Will you continue to score points? And what would be the benefit? Well, I don't know yet. I think the
Give it
game is.
away. This is the idea. As you travel to these countries, they need energy and they need books of wisdom and they need books of meditation in a way. Again, it's just a formula to sort of teach you to, yes, collect resources, but at the same time to give resources where it's needed. So I think
Right.
it's part of the collaboration and cooperation among you and the others in the different countries.
Well, this is going to be the outstanding revelation, isn't it? Because it's confounding when you think the number of teenagers who have continued for over 20 years, well into their 30s, 40s, and 50s, still being gamers and still being, say, well, we don't have time to play the game. Well, we do have a lot of time to watch TV, and we do have a lot of time to play games. So can we realign the waste of time, if you will, playing games where they teach us how to kill and by desensitizing us, or can we learn through the games of the plasma science, which involves cooperation and enhancement through knowledge?
And referring to the game, let me just bring up a couple quick pictures here. This was a t-shirt that I used to wear in the 90s when I was working with different groups. But I just saw a similarity between this and the game in a way. Ed was suggesting earlier, again, I tried to get these remade. This one, let's see, one of these it's from 1990s or something, and they said, this is very difficult to do. That was years ago where I tried 1993 Liquid Blue. I guess this is the designer of it. But imagine wearing this t-shirt, promoting the Peace and Enlightenment game. Ed suggested putting a QR code on this, that you're standing in the line of the supermarket and somebody could scan the QR code and actually sign up for the game in a way. And even if they didn't, they may ask you, what is this game of peace and enlightenment? I always thought we could perhaps achieve peace, but is there a game? And we can open up a conversation in a whole new dimension in a way. And this is very similar. If I bring the game over, you can see it's laid out in this 2D sort of format. Oh, I'm not sharing the screen, but that's okay.
Can I address?
Share the screen for a minute. We'll just, and you can take it right back.
Okay.
So there it is. So very similar to the t-shirt work, and you just have the QR code or play the game of peace and enlightenment and so on. It'll open up a conversation, and it's great advertising, I think, to bring people into the game. I'm sure the foundation is already on top of it, but wouldn't that be, I mean, maybe not this particular design. Again, this is a 30-year-old shirt. I still have it, but it's got some holes in it and so on. So I thought this would be great to wear, and I just wore it to, try to wake people up that there's a bigger place than just in your backyard. You remember how people used to say, you do anything you want, but just don't do it in my backyard. Now let's open the whole planet up as our backyard. And if things are going wrong, we come in and we help. And this is what this game, I think, is slated to do. Go ahead and take the screen back, please, Alex.
Oh, okay.
Let's see if anyone else has a comment or a question or something they'd like to raise. Of course,
Well,
yes, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to touch base on Micah's question here, about
Oh, yes.
the positioning of the spoons within the Beijing conference. And when you consider the fact that the gold was raining, it was an interesting question as to, is it going to rain in the spoon or beside the spoon?
It did both.
Yeah, but if you're a painter and you splatter the paint all over, are you going to put spoons out to catch the paint, or are you going to take a drop sheet and cover the whole floor?
Not
I
sure.
think what the inference is that there was more there than meets the eye, and it wasn't really discussed. But as we've seen with the announcement of the silver shortage, we were talking about it the other day over dinner, and we thought, it's entirely possible that people will go around stealing, your cutlery to salvage the silver.
Well, somebody was saying that 850 tons of silver has disappeared out of Venezuela.
Well, we don't know what's true. What we do know is that there's a massive shortage.
Yes.
And as a
And he
result,
thanks the Chinese for that shortage, because this is going to push the Western countries right into the creation of materials through cosmic ray fields. And he went into a couple of examples of how much material it takes to make one missile or one car or something else. And again, you can have the material, but you need the processing, and that processing takes centers to set up, takes a number of years. So even if you have the ore, processing it takes time to set up those sort of factories.
well, just remember that when there's a conflict and one is exhibiting, shall we say, a greater capability over the other, and then therefore starts to, win a lot, in war, if you can call that winning. But eventually the loser gets cornered, and eventually they get to the point where they have nothing to lose.
Mm.
And there's nothing more formidable than an opponent who has nothing to lose.
Right.
At that point in time, there's a lot of irrationality, and we can clearly see, what's going on the political stage around the world, that there's a lot of irrational thinking, and you wonder why educated people are thinking in those regards, and they're in a losing position. That's really where the problem sits. So, they're getting more desperate and more out of control. And
Yep. As Mr. Kesh has shown, there's a way out. There is a definite way out, and it's already been shown and proven and tested. So, as he said, man will accept this technology not out of the love of it, but out of the fear of his own demise. Are we going to bring our demise because we wanted to steal someone else's silver or gold or land or oil? How foolish, when we can create it out of the energy fields. But we haven't caught on quite yet.
Well, that's exactly. And there was a movie with Michael Caine called The King and and I think that was the title of the movie. And they were in some Asian country, and they were British soldiers, and they found themselves in this country, and accidentally they found that there was a vault or a temple, and inside that temple was enormous wealth in the form of jewelry and gold and diamonds. And they thought, my God, we should just grab all this and take it back to England. And they were kind of stunned that there were no guards. But if they were going to steal this, which is highly gravitational, highly dense, certainly burdensome, they didn't have pockets big enough to take it back home. And so the desire to steal the gold vanished. So they just left it there. And they said, well, they're not worried about us stealing it. Why should we worry about taking it back? Why don't we just enjoy the fruits of the environment and blend in with the rest of the natives? That's a very cursory overview of the movie, but the moral of the story is if you want to burden yourself down with the physicality in terms of the wealth, then by all means. But
This is exactly what China has done. They've trapped themselves in the matter state by cornering a good part of much of these markets.
yeah, exactly. Mark, listen, I just want to thank you and everybody else here for making this meeting such a dynamic meeting, and then thank you for allowing me to continue to present.
Yeah.
So let's let's enjoy the new year, and let's stay positive and understand that the at the core, each of us has a soul, and that soul is your best friend, and it will never lie to you. Thank you, everyone.
Yes, thank you, Alex, as well. Let me just ask Milan, have you received an invitation at all? I know Ed was looking for you on Telegram, and I think Alex was as well. Did anything happen in that regard?
Yes, yes, I have. I've received
Okay,
it, and I thank them for it.
very good. Anyone else want to share anything? How about this idea, Alex? We talk about our senses and we rely on those senses so much. Mr. Kesh said you call them the five senses. I call them the five prisons. How could that be? Anyone? Are we being fooled by trusting our senses in the matter state, or the physical, the smell, touch, see, hear, taste?
Well, and also remember that we've always referenced the sixth sense, and yet, it's how do you explain that?
The third eye, you mean?
Well, that's another one, isn't it?
Or the Cyclops?
Yeah, that's the third eye. There you go. Yeah. So again, due to the lack of understanding, we were not able to explain this. But now we're starting to be more courageous in doing so, and understanding that there's way more than meets the eye, and especially when you get into the Pico scale, you really can't even see it with the naked eye. And yet, with some kind of physical enhancement, you can see it. So this has been the breakthrough. Well, is that the limit? And how big is big and how small is small?
Yeah, I was mentioning what you said about that microscope and how only certain people can have access to that certain microscopes, right? They don't want you to see this process of creation in the very, very weak and smaller levels. They cut it off at a certain point, correct? We're
Well, yeah,
not
but you
able
know,
to investigate any deeper than a certain level, which you have said that these microscopes are not available to the average scientist or something. It's illegal, you said, to actually have them, to look at the creation in a much smaller way.
yeah, yeah. So, but you know, well, it's almost like making life illegal, isn't it?
Gosh. Okay, but we'll get there. Again, this is just starting to open up that energy dimension which has been hidden from the man. Remember, as I've said many times, Mr. Kesh indicated, we're opening up this mystery of the matter state of the entity to its energies. And I think it applies across the board. As he said, with 1 grain of rice, I can feed the entire world. So this is how far we are from actually understanding how could you possibly feed an entire world of billions of people with 1 grain of rice. But if you know how to play, it's probably child's play.
Well, as a case in point, if you're looking at the frozen gas ball and you look at one magnetical emission, you're looking at it coming from one core, one gravitational core. How can so many magnetical lines come from one core?
Billions, huh? Yeah. At least millions. So we're just opening up this dimension, but it certainly will bring us into a peaceful position, I think, as time goes on. It may not happen overnight as we continue to hear, but that means we just need to give more collectively to the soul of these leaders and others and learn to work in that dimension. It's much more effective than matter state protest, phone calls, letters, and the rest of it. So yes, there's a solution for the silver. As he said, the rare earth with this technology won't be rare anymore. But I think China has helped to push the West and sort of back them into this, that they'll have to find a source for this material besides stealing it from things that have already been mined. They're going to run out of places. And there's a huge demand for silver in the cars, in the batteries, and so on and so forth across the board, the missiles. And of course, I don't believe any of the silver that'll be created this way will even be allowed to be used in that process. Even China's doing it now in the matter state. They're monitoring everything that these materials are used for. So no problem. It's, again, our resources are the universe, and the universe has unlimited resources. And we mine it as we go, as we need. Any other questions, thoughts, comments, interests?
Hello.
Yes, yes.
Hello. Thank you. Actually, I think as the more biggest problem for the humanity is because not believing herself and himself. So, because you remember when you believe, you create. But you all the time take a scarf many things, many not believing you. Of course,
right.
You take a problems all the time because when do you it's like when Mr. Kess told give a I'm sorry answer to answer. Do you need think for you give love to your daughter? Of course not, because it's part of you. It's inside you. The love is inside you, but you don't believe in you. You never create. And many times, Mr. K said, the creation is collective creation too. But you not believe in you, all your family no believe in, all members no believe in herself. Of course, collectively, that community never discover new ways for elevate, new ways for much better your life.
Yes, absolutely. Whenever I explained to one of the men wearing the robe, and I said, if I'm made in the image of the Creator, then I am the Creator. Oh, no, 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 no. You're misunderstanding. You're not the Creator.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, Mr. Kesh made quite a profound statement here. I'll just read it. Try to understand what was explained today. We are giving you a slowly key to the process of the creation. Now you know how a single ray has led to the creation of the universe. And I made man in the image of myself because it's me who, by interaction of myself, led to the creation of you.
Yeah.
How can you be any different than me? As I create you with the interaction of the field of myself and the packages of plasma, what I call the soul, with the interaction of another soul, and the environment field, which I created in that environment to manifestation of the physicality of the man. So I do everything myself, and you claim it to be you. We go for a break and try to understand.
Yeah. Anybody or in all community can change the environment, because when people take believe in yourself, of course, modify your environment, because all the time, like by the pushing the community for change, and it's like, for example, you see the river or the ocean and say, oh my God, have many plastic, okay, I need clean. And when you see, many people go to the clean because you believe in you and you give it that energy. And the other people connected immediately because you're more stronger, you give it to the other. And it's important believing you, definitely.
Yeah, and playing this game is going to enlighten us to that understanding, I believe, Elizabeth, what you're referring to. It we'll get stronger in that area of really, in a way, believing in ourselves or trusting in ourselves more. As Mr. Kesh said, I consider my soul the soul of the Creator, my physicality the earth, and my soul of physicality the atmosphere. So he already considers his soul as the soul of the Creator, which we just read. I do everything myself, and you claim it to be you.
Yeah, you be part of the creator.
Absolutely.
Of course, you creator, but mostly the people don't understand or not believe. Actually, not believe.
They'll come around to it slowly, gradually, collectively, all are.
Yeah.
No question about it.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And continuing by to the people, and letting the people all the time connected with the all souls, will be part of the soul of the peace all the time. Believe in your own soul and give it to the other. You beautiful energy for be part of the peace, for the people believe in you and your own soul. Of course, the people change behavior around and change all environment too. And thank you for that. And continuing by that, you give it an exhale from you, beautiful energy, much better you soul, much better soul, you much better energy for the other people, be part of that peace. Thank you so much.
That's why, thank you, Elizabeth. Collectively, we're stronger because we have a wider variety of fields to offer up, I think, to the soul. So
Yes.
we're making that bouquet at 9 o'clock or every 3 hours, however often you'd like to do it. And just participate in this process. You don't lose anything by giving. You actually nourish yourself in a way. Remember that ray that you give comes back stronger, and then stronger enhances you, nourishes you, that you can then give more. And that's what it's all about. The giving to
Yes.
bring the elevation to the others. Even if they elevate past your position, it's no problem as I see it, or as it's been
Yes,
explained.
because remember it as one, is all is as one soul only. Because but it's divided like stars, millions and millions, but it's only one energy, a big energy. Of course, a big soul, only one soul. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Anything
Alex,
else,
for your, oh my God, your weekly contribution for us. Thank you, thank you.
Yes. Anything else anyone would like to bring? Again, there's much more ahead of us than behind us, but we'll allow it to be opened up. Continue to play the game. Join us in the transmission sessions. Again, I think what I'll do today is play the video, Keep Keshe Foundation Free for Humanity, that Alex and others have voiced over, and then the final disclaimer, and the meeting will come to an end. Any other thoughts, comments, questions, or issues anyone would like to raise? Thank you all for being here. We appreciate it.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
I think we need one way. No one way is better for give it problems with the game, because it's time for solve all problems. So, but when they present the problem, I say, okay, who give it the information? Who asked for solve that problem? So yeah, we need know what is the most better way for solve the problems, for give it information or ask for.
As I said, the game is going to be enhanced when the energy dimension is brought into this, but keep playing. Again, it doesn't have an extensive manual with it, but we're going to learn from each other, and you can teach yourself as well. But as I said, I think the beauty is these hidden technologies within the game that will enhance your ability to do some of these things. Again,
Yeah, but you remember it, that time it is tested. For that reason, need way for you, okay, you give it. Okay, have problems because need solve, because in March 21, really no need more problems. Really is perfectly function.
that's what
Yes,
we're
for
hoping for.
yeah.
That's what they're hoping for. Yes, March
Yeah.
21st, the Iranian New Year apparently is the official launching of the Keshe Foundation game. But we'll see how it develops. And again, sometimes these things, problems arise that, and it takes time to sort them out. But hopefully, this is what we're wishing for, to see it, and then we can start playing. But spread the word around. As Mr. Keshe said, we need many people playing this game, and I think it's a blessing that this is probably. Are there other games? Is anyone a gamer here? Are there games of peace? I've never been a gamer or was enamored with that so much, but this one, it seems to be. I've taken to it. But are there any other games of peace? And there's certainly not any hidden technologies in the games. And I believe it's a beautiful thing for children to be able to earn some meager funds, or maybe some quite large funds. We'll have to see.
I thought you had to be 18 to play the game.
I'm not sure. He said from children up to grandmothers. But I'm not sure. We'll get a clarification on that as we move forward. Okay, any other thoughts? Thank you, Randy.